Alrighty guys, here it is right here. This is a journey, I want to say. Towed in, no start, long crank time. They think it's a fuel pump. Let's see. Foot on the brake. Whoa. Come on, baby. Whoa. Very well could be a fuel pump, but before you condemn the fuel pump, guys, we got to verify this stuff. Don't just yell out fuel pump. You don't know. Now, the best way to do that, this is a short video, so I can't do it on this video. Grab your fuel pressure gauge and tie into the fuel system and monitor the pressure. That's all you got to do. Your gauge going to have a numeric form, a numeric number. Use that number, I'm guessing 50 to 60 PSI while it's running. But your problem is the fuel is not getting up to the rails to allow starting fast enough. So it's called a long crank time. But we're going to diagnose this, guys. Stay tuned for the full video, all right? Be right back. Alrighty guys, I got it up in the air, so all I want to do is look around. I don't smell any fuel, but when you're dealing with a long crank time that's a result of low fuel pressure, first you want to look for any signs of fuel leak. Okay, around the fuel tank area, I don't see any wet spots on here, so we're gonna condemn, or we're gonna it's not fuel leak related. All right, stay tuned. Alrighty guys, so I have my gauge hooked up. Okay, remember I spliced into the feed line. This line come directly from the pump. Remember we spoke about that earlier. I have my gauge in series with this system right here. This is the fuel rail. This is where the fuel pressure goes to fire off the injectors or deliver pressure on the injector so the computer can fire off the injectors. All right, now as you can see, I got 0 PSI naturally, right? You don't want to put a gauge on under pressure. All right, so let me call a helper over here so he can start this up, and we're gonna watch this pressure hopefully go up. We're gonna see how fast it go up. Remember, this is a long crank time. We suspecting fuel pump, but we in the middle of diagnosing. As a mechanic, that's what you have to do. You got to troubleshoot it and find out why you have long crank time. If you suspect fuel pressure or the fuel pump is causing that, then simply verify it by hooking up your gauges. Okay, yeah, hold tight, let me find a helper. All right, fire it up. All right guys, here's what I suspect. All right, the fuel pump gets hot and it stopped working. Okay, yes, heat can damage a fuel pump. Remember the old saying, guys, it's not good to ride around on E. Okay, you don't want your fuel pump to overheat, then it stopped delivering. All right, notice in my opinion, when the fuel pump gets hot, it stops putting out pressure. So when we turn the key on or push to the run position, that initial burst, remember you get a 2-second primer for every car. That's the priming. All right, when you turn your key to run, you might hear a bzzz. That's the pump running to prime the system in anticipation for starting. All right, now if the engine or the computer don't see RPM from the crank sensor, you're never going to start. Okay, we having a problem with that initial burst getting to the fuel rail at times. In other words, intermittently. So one can assume based off this testing that I just did that you got a problem with the fuel pump. Now, mind you, do not suspect problems with the fuel pump if you got a leak. If you got a leak anywhere, guys, that leak can lower your pressure when you shut the car off. All right, that's why I let the car up in the air and I looked around the fuel tank area. Y'all remember earlier I looked around, made sure you sniff around, you smell around, you don't smell any fuel leak or you don't visually see any fuel leak, because that could affect fuel pressure as well. All right, so we verified that, and now we wanted to verify fuel pressure. We just did that. I got fuel pressure. The car will run, just sometimes she say long crank time, and it'll just start. With this many miles, I think it was 140,000 miles, it's time for a fuel pump. So we're gonna upsell her a fuel pump. Okay, now also keep in mind, because fuel pressure is not monitored by the PCM, where is it? Right here, the computer. There's no fuel pressure sensor on this rail that would tell the fuel or the controller how much pressure is on the fuel system. The computer don't know the fuel pressure. All right, so it has to rely on other things like O2 sensor, maybe NAP sensor, things like that to it really can't determine if fuel pressure is low. It just have to do some calculation based on input data from those sensors. All right, you will never see a fault code that says bad fuel pump. You never see a code that say bad anything, but mechanics be looking for that because they need that way out. They need that cop out. Yes, it would be extremely great if the computer would spit out a code of, yo, fuel pump bad, P05231, fuel pump bad. Yeah, but you know, life is not that simple. So you have to go out and find the problem, duplicate the problem, and address the problem by a way of replacing the failed part. In this case, in my opinion, the fuel pump. All right, so what are my thoughts on the fuel pump? I have always been the type of guy to say a fuel pump should be replaced between 100 and 150,000 miles, whether you have problems with it or not. Guys, it's an electrical motor. That is one part you can call a motor. This is not a motor. This is an engine, all right? But a fuel pump is an electrical motor that requires 12 volts and ground to run, all right? If there's no 12 volts in ground, that fuel pump will never run. It can be a fuel pump made of gold, okay? Top of the line, Mopar OEM fuel pump. It doesn't matter. Even a Derman fuel pump. And none of that matters if there's no 12 volts in ground going to it. So now this is a long crank time. Had this been a no start, yeah, then you should suspect power supply and ground. You still should in a way, but based off my experience, I know to go straight to the fuel presence or fuel pressure department of this diagnosis. All right, so I hope y'all got some out of this video. I'm gonna merely write up, yeah, specs. It's bouncing around, but specs is right around between 50 and 60. So like I say, it's just a long crank time. So we're gonna order a fuel pump. Remember guys, back in the day there used to be a fuel pressure regulator externally. Those days are gone, guys. Yeah, 69 Dart, man. Yeah, I'll Philip the third, all y'all older cats, y'all remember that external fuel pressure regulator regulates the fuel pressure. Because remember, most pumps just gonna push out pressure. You need a device to regulate that pressure. Okay, you just can't, like oil pumps nowadays, it just can't push out reckless oil pressure. That stuff needs to be regulated, and fuel pressure is no different. All right, but the fuel pressure regulator, they didn't eliminate it. You still need it. It's just that it is now built onto the fuel pump itself. All right, yes, the regulator as well as the fuel filter. I mean, this was the last time anybody replaced the fuel filter on a car. I'll wait. You know why? Because it's not externally anymore. It's part of the fuel pump itself. All right, so I'm gonna merely order or write up my estimate for a fuel pump on this vehicle, and that's sure I'm gonna look everything else over, guys. I'm obligated to look things over. So I still have the car running, guys. As you can see, I'm between 50 and 60. Now what I'm gonna do, because here's the real test of this all, right? When I turn it off, I want to see if or how fast this gauge drop, and that will show why you have long crank time. Let me turn it off real quick. All right, let's go watch the gauge. Watch the gauge. Is it dropping? Is it dropping? Yeah, it's dropping, guys. And on top of that, there's no leak. Remember, we had the tank, or we had the car in the air looking around in the tank area. Look at that thing drop, guys. Now, you can't maintain fuel pressure for a long period of time. However, you shouldn't drop it in a quick period of time as well, okay? If you turn the car off and you stuck at 50 PSI, that should hold for a good, I don't know, for a minute, okay? So, yeah, but that is dropping extremely fast. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the reason for your long crank time. So understand it like this. When I get ready to start this car up again, it's got to go through that long priming process again. Remember, you turn the key to run, it primes it. All right, so if the pump is not priming functioning or well, you will get a long crank time. Yeah, that's dropping way too fast, guys. I wanted y'all to see that. Yeah, that went from 50 down to 20, 30. Yeah, so this is my problem, guys. I need a fuel pump. All right.